Hello, artists. Welcome back to Meet the Masters. We have another fantastic artist this month. Her name was Maria Martinez, and this is a short clip of Maria working on one of her clay pots a little bit later on in her life. Okay, so Maria was born around 1887 in San Ildefonso Pueblo, New Mexico. And she was an American Indian potter, so she is famous for her clay pots and, as we'll see later, her black on black pottery. Here is a photograph of the town that she grew up in, or a building in the town, and then the natural area around her town in New Mexico. All right, so when Maria was growing up, Spanish tinware like this was becoming really popular for serving food and cooking food. And so the traditional clay pots that her tribe had used over time kind of fell out of favor. Luckily, though, Maria and her family kept the tradition alive, and Maria was able to learn how to make the pots excuse me, from her aunts. Okay, so here's a photograph of one of her early pots. Okay, so this man is important to the story. So he was an archaeologist. An archaeologist is somebody who goes and looks for remains of civilizations or old structures. His name was Edgar Lee Hewitt. And he had been in the area digging and trying to find ancient pottery. He was able to find a lot of broken pottery and a lot of pieces, but he wasn't able to find a lot of whole pots and serveware that hadn't been destroyed over time. So here's a picture of him at one of his dig sites. Okay, so here might be an example of something that he could have found and then put back together. So you can see that at one time this was broken into a number of pieces, and then kind of like a puzzle, they put it back together, glue it, but there's still some pieces missing. And so Hewitt really wanted to showcase to people who came to museums what the pottery would look like if it hadn't aged over time and if it hadn't been cracked and shattered. So he asked Maria if she would make some pots for the museum displays that he was involved with. Maria was known to be one of the fastest pottery makers, and she could also make the thinnest pottery. And so she came highly recommended, and this is one example of her early pots. Now you'll notice that this pot is black, and it's not painted black. She was able to learn from a neighboring village how to make her pottery black. And the way they would do this would be to smother the fire, and then the smoke would deposit that black color into the pottery. Okay, so at first Maria was kind of embarrassed after Hewitt had come and taken some pottery for the museums. She didn't think her work was very good, and so she hid a lot of it away until Hewitt came back to visit. And his friends were really impressed with it, and they wanted to buy a number of her pieces. So that really motivated her to work harder at her craft and get better at it. So after a lot of years of practice and trial and error and really honing her skills, she was able to produce beautiful pieces like this. So you'll notice it's a fully black clay pot, but there's also, notice how there's matte areas. So it's a non-shiny area, and then there's shiny black areas. And we'll talk about how she was able to do that when we see videos of how they did it. So here's another beautiful example, and the light allows you to see the shiny black and the matte black. Okay, she also did polychrome pottery. And so polychrome is simply the practice of decorating architectural elements or sculpture or pottery like this with a variety of colors. So not only did she do black on black pottery, but she also did polychrome pottery. And so you can see the blacks and the tans and the oranges and reds in these pieces as well. So lots of detail and lots of design in those. Okay, now the way that she would make her pots was done by a process called coiling. And so in order to coil, you may have done this before with, if you had like some clay or Play-Doh, where you kind of roll out like a snake, and then they would wrap it around, roll out another snake kind of shape, wrap it on top, and then pinch it together. So this pot, you can see all of the coils built on top of each other. And then once it's pinched and shaped, then it's nice and smooth like this one right here. Okay, so let's talk about how she would make her pottery. So the first thing is to collect the clay. And the best place to collect clay is in old, dried stream beds, because clay is lighter than other dirt and sediment, and so it will float higher, longer in water. So it's easier to find the clay where there once was water because it will settle a little bit higher up on top of the earth. Okay, and then the clay has to be stored in an adobe structure for a certain amount of time. And then the clay is mixed with a gray pink and a blue sand. And this is actually video taken in the 70s from Maria's village, and these are some people that worked with her. She's not actually making the pottery here. She was a little bit older, but she's supervising these videos, and this is how she also made her pots. Okay, so after they mix that sand, he's going to add a little bit of water, and he's going to knead it all together, kind of like you're making a dough for a bread. And you have to add just the right amount. If you don't have enough, you know it'll become too crumbly, and if you add too much, then it's way too runny, and the water won't evaporate in time. Okay, so that looks like a pretty good clay. Okay, the next step is she's going to make kind of a tortilla shape for the base of the pot, and then she's going to put it in this on top of this form that's called a pokey. So there's her tortilla. She's really pounding that clay really well to get any air bubbles out. You can't have any air bubbles before you put it in the fire. And then this right here is that pokey. So that's going to hold the clay while the pot is built. Okay, and then she's going to go around and she's going to pinch up about a 1-inch high wall, and this will become the base of the pot. All right, now here is where coiling comes into play. So she's taking this ball of clay and rolling it out into a nice big thick coil, and watch, she's going to wrap that around on top of that base that she created. And then she's going to start pinching that and building that all together so that you don't actually see those rolls and coils once the pot is complete. Okay, so she's built it up. She's added probably one more coil here, and she's pinching it and working it around so it starts to build in height, but you can't see any of those snake shapes or those coils. Okay, and then she's going to start shaping this. So she's going to pull the top in so it kind of domes in, and she's going to use some tools to do that. Also, once it's finished, she's going to take some tools and kind of almost like sand it and get any excess pieces off and just really shape it until it's just how she wants it. So she's just shaping the opening at the top to make it nice and smooth. And then here it's dried a little bit, and so she's able to go and sand it and smooth it and get it just how she wants it. Okay, now here she is going to essentially kind of paint the piece with what is called a red slip. This slip is actually just a special red clay mixed with a little bit of water, but it looks just like paint, and she's using a piece of cloth just to go over it. She doesn't want to saturate it too much. The areas where she applies the red slip will come out shiny when she's done with her pot. Okay, and then the next step is to apply a gray slip. So this is another type of clay with water, and he's using a yucca brush, or she's using a yucca brush, excuse me, made from a yucca plant to paint a nice design. This will be the matte part of her pot. So anywhere where she's painted with the gray slip will be matte, and it will not be the shiny part. Okay, now let's take a look at how they're going to fire these pots so that they're complete. So you have to do it on a still day because you don't want a lot of wind. If the fire touches the pots, it will ruin them. So here they've got a fire built, and they kind of, you could see the grate on top so that the flames won't touch the pottery, and then they're laying out the pots that are going to be fired on top. Okay, and here I kind of sped it up because it's a long process, but they've built the fire underneath. They're starting to put these metal pieces around to really keep that heat in, to get it really nice and hot. Okay, so they've got really hot, that was a picture of her. Now what they're doing right there is important. They're smothering their fire with cow manure. I know, kind of gross, but they smother it. There she is again, Maria, so that it gets really smoky inside, and all of that black smoke makes black deposits into the pottery. So then when they bring it out, look at that. It is magically turned black from that earlier when they were placing the pots. It was tan and red. Okay, so here is the finished product, and then they will be buffed and wiped so they get nice and cleaned up, and all the shiny areas are nice and shiny, and it looks fantastic. Okay, here is one of Maria's pieces that is just beautiful. So much wonderful technique to get those two flutes that come out, and again you can see that beautiful matte decoration next to the shiny areas. Okay, so let's see if you remember what we learned about Maria Martinez. Question number 1, where was Maria Martinez born and raised? A, Florida, B, Spain, or C, New Mexico? You got it, it was New Mexico in San Ildefonso Pueblo. All right, question number 2, what is polychrome? Is it A, applying decoration to pottery in a variety of colors, B, a rare silver parrot, or C, Dua Lipa's newest song? Congratulations, another correct answer. It's applying that decoration with a variety of colors, and Maria was also known for that. All right, final question, friends. Let's see if you can get 100%. How did Martinez make black pottery? A, she painted it with spray paint. B, she fired the pottery with special wood. Or C, she smothered the fire so the smoke would deposit a black tint into the clay. absolutely good job at sea. So remember that that smoke would deposit that black tint into those pots. Okay, so that was just a short introduction to Maria Martinez. Here's a couple of photographs of her, one when she was younger and one towards the end of her life. But I hope you were inspired. We are going to make our own pottery when I come to your class. I can't wait. And I hope you enjoyed learning about Maria. See you soon. Bye.